a love for him, and said to him, "One thing you lack, go sell all and give to the poor." All right? Or go and sell all you possess and give to the poor. That is. So Jesus did not point him to another commandment, because what he was expecting was for Jesus to tell him, okay, out of the 10 commandments, you have not kept commandment number 5, for example. But no, Jesus told him that. Jesus pointed him to a bigger commandment. Now, if you look at the commandments that Jesus read to him, they are commandments that define the relationship between us and our fellow human beings. Do not kill, do not commit adultery, eternal life. And he's given the answer, and he walks away saddened, because that is, Jesus is asking for too much. Do we sometimes find ourselves in this kind of situation where we go to God with our needs and our cries, and we present our petitions, and we ask Jesus to intervene, but when he tells us what to do, we walk away sad because we feel that Jesus is asking for too much? So this man felt that Christ was asking for too much. What did Jesus ask for? Jesus asked for all. Go and sell all. You remember the story of Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus sold half of his property. Why didn't he sell all? Well, we don't know, but I can imagine that probably he owed some people some money, so he had to sell half his property and pay back his debt, and probably the other half, I don't know. But this guy was told to go and sell all. I'm just trying to imagine if somebody walked to your house today and told you to sell everything and give it to the poor, and now you can thereon follow Jesus. I mean, it's a hard question. It's tough. This guy did not expect this to happen to him, but this is what Jesus asked him to do. So let us look at what this all means. Here, the word all means surrender. And the title of my sermon today was Surrender to Win. There are certain battles that you cannot win without surrender. One of the battles that we are fighting now is to be good with God and inherit eternal life. But we cannot get eternal life without surrender. So this young ruler was not ready for surrender, because this surrender meant that he was going to lose everything. And I'm going to talk about that shortly. He was asked to sell all that he had. Not one, not two, all that he had. But was he making a sacrifice? The question is that, was he making a sacrifice? Was Jesus asking for too much? Well, depending on how you look at it, it doesn't look like a sacrifice, because a sacrifice is where you give everything and you're left with nothing. But here is a case where he was going to give something in return for something. So he was going to give his earthly possessions, but what was he going to inherit in return? He was going to inherit eternal life. So Christ says, sell all your possessions or possession or all that you possess and give it to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. I mean, treasure. That is something that is valuable, something that has been kept for you. And here you cannot, sell a few earthly items so that you are able to inherit eternal kingdom. I mean, if it was business, really, if it was a business deal, how do you look at this business deal? Sell your earthly possessions and inherit eternal life. This guy, if it was a business deal, he picked on the wrong deal, because earthly possessions will go away. At one point, he will lose everything. But the treasure that is in heaven is eternal. So if it's a business deal, this guy made the wrong deal. So what does it mean to lose all or to sell all? Sometimes we try to think about it in different ways, but my understanding was that if you sell everything, and it's not just earthly possessions we're talking about here. Here we are talking about losing your money to start with, okay? Property, okay? But once you lose property, you're also going to lose your status. We know very well that in the times that we live in now, money and status are two things that go together. So once you sell all that you have and give it to the poor, you're going to lose your status and influence. You've seen how we run around following politicians because of money. Once those politicians are broke, you never see anybody following them. So that's the same thing. Once they go down, nobody wants to follow them. When they're up there, everybody wants to follow them. And once you lose your wealth, you lose power. Okay? You lose power. So if you don't have wealth, you're powerless. That is the nature of life. If you don't have wealth, you don't have power. And he was also going to lose his leadership. Once you left without anything, people will not regard you as a leader. They will kick you out and say you can take a backseat. And even worse, this guy was likely going to lose his family. How can you just fall from riches to rags? People who looked up upon you, people who depended on you, and suddenly you cannot dish out the money that they were following you for. So you lose your friends, you lose your family, you lose your power, you lose everything around you. And that is the word all that Jesus was talking about. That if you are to follow me, be ready to lose everything. It's not just the wealth. It was about all. And this is the word, this is where the word surrender comes from. That for you to follow Christ, you must deny everything that you have. You must surrender all, because it means that it's going to affect every aspect of your life. So surrendering to Jesus is not as easy as we think, because it means going out of your way to present yourself fully to Christ, to give your free will to Christ, and to fully depend on him. And that is something that we find very difficult to do, just like the rich young ruler. So when he was told this, what happened? We're told that he walked away saddened. And Jesus was equally saddened, because here was a case where there was an opportunity for this man to be saved. And Jesus liked him. But this guy, the story ends in a very sad manner. Instead of us reading a happy ending to the story, that this man was saved and is going to be with Christ in eternity, we read instead that this man walked away and he was sad. So a story that began with joy and eagerness ends up to be a sad story. Now, do we have such an experience with our lives? Do we sometimes run to Jesus, eager to get answers from him, praying earnestly to him, kneeling before him, and then he gives us the answer about what we need to do? And instead of rejoicing in that answer, we walk away sad because we cannot keep up with what Jesus wants us to do. It's our experience that we have such moments in our lives. I want to end my sermon today by the text that we read as a key text. And I want to take you back to the book of Matthew, chapter 16 and verse 24. If you're there, and it says, then Jesus told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Now, this is another interesting text from Jesus, saying that if anyone would come after me, if, that word if, for those who did a bit of mind school, I don't know what it's about, but it's conditional. It's a conditional statement. If, meaning that you can decide not to. So that shows that Jesus is a person who does not force us into certain decisions. He allows us to make our own decisions. And so he says, if anyone would come after me, okay, let him deny himself. So the first point there, how do we get eternal? How do we inherit eternal life? Or if I go back to the question that the young rich ruler asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? The first thing, you must make a decision. If anyone would come to me, it starts with a decision. If Without that decision, you will not have made the first step. So it has to begin with a decision. If I want to come after Jesus, so it's either you go left or you go right. Let him deny himself. That's the second point. So these are practical things that we have to do. We must make the first decision that we are following Jesus. Number two, you must deny yourself. And we've just seen what denial means. Denial means that you forsake everything. You forsake your family. You forsake the worldly pleasures. You forsake your standards. You forsake everything that you can think about that gives you pleasure. And so you deny yourself. Basically, what you're saying is that you're going to leave everything that you're used to. Look at the apostles, for example. When they were called, they had to leave fishing. Matthew had to leave his tax collection. I don't know, some had to leave, Luke had to leave his work as a doctor or something. So they abandoned their careers to follow Christ. They denied themselves. I'm not saying that you have to leave your job to follow Christ. No, that's not the point. The point here is that everything that you do must be preceded by Christ. So Christ takes precedence in our Christ takes precedence